One of the things that you mentioned is that large projects can make you or break you.
Large software projects are always trying to fail. Sometimes they come to us on the heels of a project that did not succeed, that was an expensive failure.
What is a typical large project for you?
Project is crossing into the six figures, right? We're a small agency, we're 12 people. That would qualify as a large project. Software has inherent uncertainty, and managing that uncertainty is the key to success.
I think AI is making us more organized. By the time they'll get much better.
If you add the word AI to your investor pitch deck, your chances of closing a round of funding go up. So everyone's adding it. And so now people are going to their local burger chain and saying, burgers, but AI.
One of the things that you mentioned is that large projects can make you or break you. How come? Because there's a general consensus that if a company gets a large project, it's always going to make them. So please elaborate on that.
Well, there are various statistics out there, but one of the ones that's often cited as a truism is that over 50% of large software projects fail. And, I think there's some truth to that, right? Large enterprise companies, resources almost aren't the deciding factor there, right? Often even adding resources to a project can sometimes make a problematic project even more problematic. And, for us, when we engage with a client, we view our job as to help them navigate the risks and get them to the rewards of what the large project can deliver. And sometimes we engage with a client and it's a fresh start, and we have to, they haven't done a big complex software project before, and we can help set expectations along the way. Sometimes they come to us on the heels of a project that did not succeed, that was an expensive failure in every sense of the word, right? And that's expensive in terms of money, and expensive in terms of time, and expensive in terms of reputation, right? People stake their reputation at the company as to whether these projects work or don't work. So when we engage with a client, let's say we have a client come in and the tail's been wagging the dog on the previous project, right? That no one feels in control, that they feel they're working in service to the technology tool or the website. They're having to chase it around, plug security holes, fix bugs. It's not moving forward. They feel that the technology solution is in charge of them, and our job is to come in and flip the script and put you as the client in charge, that you feel you are moving forward and that the project is under your control. Now, part of that is setting the expectations, right? If it's under your control, is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be long? What are the timeline expectations? What are the scope expectations? What are the functionality expectations? What are stakeholders expecting? Putting you in control means putting you in a position to accurately convey expectations to your stakeholders as well. So they know what to expect along the journey. When we're in the midst of a project, in the throes of it, we view it as, large software projects are always trying to fail, right? They're always trying all the doors of the ways that they can fail. And our job is to know what those doors are and make sure that they don't, right?
When you say large project, may mean different for different use. So what is a typical large project for you?
Well, for us, it is a relative thing, right? If it's a company like Microsoft, it's probably a project, that's into the tens and hundreds of millions of budget when you factor in all the costs. For us, if a project is crossing into the six figures, right? We're a small agency, we're 12 people, that would qualify as a large project. And for us, even at that scale, and I don't think it's necessarily, I think there's some universality to this. The laws of physics start to change, right? When you get into 6-figure projects than from, 5-figure projects. A 5-figure project, one can expect to get a really good WordPress website that tells your story, right? Is a place you can put products, have news about your company, have the team page, but compellingly tells your story. You can expect to get that done for about $50K. So US USD. So we wouldn't put that in the bucket of a large software project. But when it becomes a little more complex with functionality, or it has a central role in the enterprise, right, to help you get data from point A to point B with some transforms along the way, the laws of physics start to change on the project, right? That, a good example of a law of physics in a large software project that, doesn't make intuitive sense unless you've been there a few times is like, oh, we're running late. Just add more developers, right? Oh, well, the laws of physics for small projects would indicate that would probably work. And if you're working on a WordPress website, that's in the 50K range, that probably is going to work, right? You can probably shave a week off the project or a couple of weeks off your delivery deadline if you add some developers at the end to get across the finish line. On a large project, the domain knowledge required, right? The technology knowledge required to build the mental model of what it is we're trying to do is such that adding more developers will actually slow it down, right? That's counterintuitive, right? Those of us that have been through the cycle a few times understand that. But if you're, on the client side, for example, and maybe this is, one of your first such projects, that's not going to make sense, right? So being able to understand that some of the levers you might expect to pull to get the job done aren't always going to work on larger projects. And because of just the scope of commitment involved, and we're, even having all your stakeholders at the table to feedback on functionality, to articulate requirements, this is a real big commitment. Another way these projects try to fail, you've probably seen this as well in your business. There's this sweet spot between under engineering a solution and over engineering a solution. So making sure you've got the underlying technology. There used to be this industry evolves pretty quickly, right? There used to be kind of a reflexive assumption that, from an engineering perspective, you really can't over engineer, right? It'll just be, a small house on an amazing foundation, right? Well, we've learned over the years that foundation can add complexity to simple things. So one of the things we want to make sure we don't allow to happen is that the easy changes to this, the solution can be easy long-term, right? This is at the core of Agile methodology. This sense, we all went through, there was a phase in the industry where pretty much every implementation was headless because it was the trend at the time, and very well-intentioned engineers would take pretty simple sites and say, well, instead of just a uniform WordPress implementation or uniform Drupal implementation, what you need to do is, have these, have a back-end data repository, have a front-end literal application, using an API to get all the data. And, coming out of the other side of that, we have inherited sites that we've seen, very simple information sites with like 3 layers in there with like Lambda in the middle on AWS. And this is to tell us when they're open, right? This is to update, press releases, right? It's to do things that should be completely doable with a monolithic application. And, 5 years ago, roughly, monolithic was almost a bad word in technology circles, right? It's like, monolithic is the old way, and headless multi-layered implementations of a new way. So hitting that sweet spot is a key way to avoid bogging down along the way as well.
So right. Some of the times when the projects which are large became challenging, in my experience here, because we are in the same industry, we work almost same kind of projects. So one is that there is scope creep when we have finalized everything on a document and everything. And sometimes, people on the other side, clients and their teams, when we have moved ahead, they somehow feel that let us add some small things here. This functionality looks really good and it's solving our purpose, but let us add few more things. And those more things go on to add about 20 to 25% of the time, and you end up in companies end up losing the profits.
Yeah,
maybe most of the time losing, it's loss as well. One of the major important thing is scope has changed. How much is that a factor for you?
It is a constant threat, right? And it really takes hold at a certain scale. We're talking about where's that break point between where this becomes a problem and not. managing a list of, for a really good, solid, communicative, SEO friendly WordPress site, but it's mobile friendly. We still have talked about that price point, but well, if there's some scope creep, we can kind of manage. We're talking about a list of 20 things and we can say, we're going to get 10 in, right? And it doesn't feel like the stakes are super crazy high. When that investment goes up and we get into this threshold, right, that scope creep risk is like, it becomes more weighty and it can be a wrecking ball. And we have some specific techniques we use to figure that out. But it's a constant risk, right? And we understand that, hey, if I get more for my money, that's better than if I get less, or if I get more by deadline, that's better than if I get less. But, you mentioned it's the one little thing phenomenon, right? It's like the old Monty Python skit, it's wafer thin, right? What could possibly go wrong if we just add this one little thing? Well, those add up, but in ways you may not expect. And I'll explain. And, I'll explain. This one is that often those one-off requirements, particularly if they come late in the project, can be at odds with the system that's been built, right? So if someone comes in with scope creep that says, this is how I want to add a piece of news on this site or this application or a piece of information, because this is how my workflow works and this product is here to improve my workflow and this will improve my workflow. Well, sometimes that little feature request can be at odds with how the same type of information is added elsewhere in the application, which is to say, and now we've created a one-off, right? Now we've said that for thing X that you need to update, well, everywhere else in the application, we do it this way. But because we've said yes to this little bit of scope creep and haven't really thought through the systemic implications of that request, that, well, now we have 9 out of 10 times it's going to be done X way and 1 out of 10 times it's going to be done Y way. And you can actually get off. Sometimes you can get that done in a pretty reasonable fashion. But now, congratulations, here comes technical debt, right? Here comes the things that will weigh down the application over time. And sometimes to accommodate that request the right way, you have to do it in a way that aligns with the system that's been built. So when those scope creep requests kind of come cascading in, particularly if they come in late in a project, holding them at bay is really important to protect the long-term longevity of the application. And that's a very tricky room to navigate, right? Because we all want to make the client happy, right? Yes makes the client happy. No typically does not make the client happy. But you owe it to the client to tell them no on occasion. So the other two techniques that we use for clients is that we intentionally go in early. There's that kickoff, the project's been greenlit, there's budget, there's tons of hopes, the old product or the old software application or website. We're all looking forward to getting rid of that and building the great new thing. And the energy in the room is great, right? It's a honeymoon period. Yeah. So we go in early and we let a little air out of the balloon right away, right? We go in, we're like, all right, this is great. I love all the good vibes, right? And if you're the project manager, you might say something like, you love me now, right? But I want everyone in this room to know that at some point in this project, more than one point, I am going to frustrate you, right? I'm going to have to say no to something you want me to say yes to. Some feature we thought was going to be delivered in a week is going to be delivered in 3 weeks, right? Software has inherent uncertainty, and managing that uncertainty is the key to success, not wishing away that uncertainty or not assuming that if you just are super insistent, you can make that uncertainty go away. So embracing that uncertainty and acknowledging early on when we have some, let's call it, when we have our maximum amount of goodwill capital, shall we say, early in the project, to put a stake in the ground right away and set expectations for down the road. There's going to be challenges. We're here to make this process as pleasant, as productive as possible for everyone. But there will be times where you're frustrated with me, or we as a team are frustrated. And when we get to one of those moments, because we will, right? I'm going to call back to this meeting and say, remember when I told you there were going to be times when you were going to be frustrated with me? And that's really useful, right? that it's good to set aside some preserves, right, early, and be able to reach for those later in the project and say, okay, yeah, this is where we're going to have to cross this bridge to get to the other side of this challenging situation.
That's a great thing that you taught me. We're going to use it here. We're going to.
Oh, absolutely.
Ask
Great chance.
And I hope many people who are listening to this and their project managers or the companies can use the same thing. So yeah, thank you for that. What's the other thing you mentioned?
The other thing is all projects, we sometimes get there different ways with different tools, right? You can have Jira boards, you can have, documentation, there's just different ways to track issues. But what always has to happen when push comes to shove towards the end is you need to take every request, including all the things stakeholders have asked for, clients have asked for in the project, including the work you need to do as a developer to make sure it's a good project, coming out of the gate. And you need to reconcile this in a single list. Because the single list represents that the resources to get things done are finite and that everything is competing with something else, right? Every yes is a no somewhere else in the project. And sometimes those are abstract, but really important, right? So maybe this project is complex enough where you need some test automation in place, right? So you're not chasing regressions, right? In production. Well, that's not sexy, right? But that takes time, right? That takes time. And it could be, am I going to choose feature X where I'm going to need it? I want this to get my job done, or we're going to do thing Y, which is test automation that's going to go into the application. Well, the project team is only so big, right? Now they could be different people that do these kinds of things, but everyone needs to understand that a yes somewhere is a no somewhere else. And one of the harder jobs of the project manager is to advocate for the things that are essential, but not super concrete, right, to the team, right? It doesn't result in a feature delivery. But putting all this in a list is really useful. Even when you're like, hey, 20, we want these 20 things. Some of these might be late discoveries. We can do 10. Let's work together to pick the 10, right? And then we have this exercise, we rank them, right? Scale of 1 to 10, right? And you've probably been in rooms like this in your day, right? They're all ones, right? I'm like, okay, scale of 1 to 100 then, right? Or 1.1, right? They can't be all ones. We can't make that work. And so we get there with a reasonable discussion. And then, of course, the key to success here is to adopt the agile methodology. One of the best things about it is this leaving behind this notion that your project is one and done, that you need to think of this project as an ongoing commitment, right? We often say it's a garden, not a house, right? Where even in a house, you need some maintenance after the fact, right? But, hey, we're going to say, between these things, we're going to get number 1 through 10 by MVP, by initial production launch. And then as a team, we're going to commit to doing, 12, 11, 12, 13 the next month, 14, 15, 16 on that list the next month. That this is not an all or nothing game, right? And that often will bring tense energy into a meeting if everyone assumes that if they don't get this in right now, that they're never going to see it ever, right? And if you can demonstrate that post MVP, that there's going to be a shared commitment by us, but a shared commitment by the organization to commit to this long term, and then you can demonstrate that with post MVP releases, that is one of the keys to success, right? And even if it's a relatively small amount compared to the sort of pace you were going at with your March to MVP, like having a meaningful commitment post MVP is probably the single greatest indicator of a project's likelihood of long-term success. It buys you the ability to adjust. It buys you the ability to, frankly, get some assumptions wrong along the way and address them. It buys you the ability to respond to stakeholder feedback. And, it makes it not an all or nothing game. So I think that is the key, but that's a shared commitment. That's a commitment by the implementation team, the implementation partner, the design partner, strategy partner, right? Which is us, right? Which is you're in that position, and by the organization to say, they're telegraphing to their team that ongoing long-term commitment to this as well. Now, so I think that's the single biggest key to success.
Yeah, really nice. How, you mentioned that 50% of the large projects do not happen.
Yeah.
They failed. Is that a study somewhere, or
I will find it and send it. I've Googled it a couple times and to go get to the source of that. And this is a stat that's been cited for years and years for enterprise level and even pre-internet, right? That these were very problematic projects, and then into the internet phase. And I don't think it's changed much, but I'll go find that stat so that we can cite it.
Great. Can we know a bit about Culture Foundry? As being like what kind of things you do and all those things?
So we're 15 years old, and we are, when we started the company, we're like, wow, we're 15 years old. And we think we recently had that milestone, and we think these milestones are very important to sort of mark, right? Sort of like, where have we come since our founding? We were founded with myself and co-founder Trevor Dodd. We had worked together in a .com in what I call the go-go 90s, right? The internet wave that was so frothy, right? It was kind of mania almost, but that mania, going into the internet early, like I was there for that energy, right? And, my co-founder Trevor Dodd and I were employee number 5 and employee number 6 at essentially a .com agency / consultancy that grew to 500 people through various means. So we saw this amazing growth in the late 90s from like 95-ish to 2000.
What were you building then? Was it applications? They used to be called software at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was the thing that you were building?
So we were building things like the first WholeFoods.com e-commerce site. And so that was, really ambitious projects that we didn't have templates for necessarily. We built things like websites for Major League Baseball teams. We built Franklin Covey is a sort of a workplace planning organization that is, there used to be something called the Franklin Planner. It probably still exists. It was paper-based, but we built a website for them. We did some work for Hyatt. We did some work for, a Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, a healthcare insurance organization, but increasingly large and ambitious projects as we went and we grew during the course of that. And blazed a lot of territory, where we just didn't have, Amazon is just coming online at the time, right? And we were looking at the Amazon e-commerce mechanisms, best design, how the e-commerce mechanism should work for WholeFoods.com. Since the late 90s, WholeFoods.com has gone through a lot of iterations since. But being there early for these things was legitimately thrilling, right? It was legitimately, and we did all sorts of kind of fun experiments. We did an internet mall, right? This is see how that would work, right? It worked reasonably well, but not good enough to go completely long term. We did an online magazine, at this company, and saw how that went. I came into the business by virtue of I wrote a comic strip called Where the Buffalo Roam, and it was one of the very first comic strips ever published on the internet. That's how I met this company and became employee number 5. I'm like, the internet thing seems pretty cool. Called Where the Buffalo Roam. And so it was based out of University of Colorado at Boulder, and it was a popular college comic strip and post-graduation. Now I'm dating myself. The number 1 and number 2 of this company, the founders are like, hey, there's this thing called Usenet, right? You can put comics online on Usenet. No one's doing it. So we should put your comic online and see how it goes. And then I'm in there using like the sort of the mail client that you had to go into the office to use, right, at their network engineering firm, and getting like fan mail from Australia, right? I'm like, this is amazing, right? In like the 90s, this was amazing, right? And so this was like, I'm like, there might be something to this internet, right? This could be a thing. And then off and running, we went on, and then I joined the company because, good Lord, why wouldn't I, right? At that stage. And we went off and did all these, crazy ambitious projects. So we founded a design team where the notion of designing a website to be anything other than a list of links, right? The first websites were just lists of links. Was kind of like, oh, that's like cool. You can load an image, the image would come in 3 waves of loading, right? To get crisper and crisper over time. So all those early stage technologies were coming online, and the excitement is really genuine. To bring it back to the thread of Culture Foundry's founding, the tech crash hit, right? The company had been acquired. The culture that had been so integral to building the company into just really just even if 500 people, it seems big, but we were out there taking business from massive consultancies to get these websites built. So it was kind of a giant killer in terms of its ability to go to, a major consultancy and walk away with the project. But that culture after acquisition got, as often happens after acquisition, it was effectively dismantled, right? And it's a common story in the cycle of companies, and integral to why we did what we did. And then the co-founder of Culture Foundry now, he was employee number 6, I was number 5. We went our separate ways for years, had different career adventures. I did a turn at big tech, at Microsoft. I did a turn, I'm a journalism graduate, so I did a turn at MSNBC on the tech team, where by virtue of being a journalist and, understanding journalism and understanding technology, led the way to build a new content management system, as they were crossing the 1 billion page view a month mark. And that was really exciting and fun to be part of a newsroom environment. My co-founder had his own independent adventure, his own ventures, and, worked with, founded a couple companies along the way. And at some point we came up for air, 15 years ago, and said, that was a pretty good experience. We'd been through the fire, right? We'd had, some great wins and some challenges along the way working together. So there was a lot of trust. And we were like, well, let's get the band back together, right? Let's found it, but this time be in control so that the culture that we build to grow the company can be the culture we use to sustain the company long term, right? It's a painful thing to put all your effort, energy, your time, and to some degree, your spirit, right? You take it really seriously to deliver quality in your job. And then when things happen outside of your control, that is effectively the destruction of that value, and you have to sit by and watch, right? This is not even about future gain, right? This is just having your sandcastle kicked down. You're like, I'm not going to do that again, right? If I'm going to put this level of effort into something, I'm going to do it and be in control of the outcome. So it's that's kind of a founding. It's why the word culture is in our name, right? The word culture is in our name because we think it is this spring from which everything else, from which everything else bubbles forth, right? And the foundry represents for us the fact that we'll do the hard work, right? We'll hammer the steel together to actually build it. Because, the other thing we never wanted to do is be a consultancy where we're like, well, here's a document, good luck with that, right? We wanted to take accountability for these ideas on the delivery side as well. And then our clients would have everything in one place. So, that's how it came to be. It was an idea, we'd get together for beers and catch up. And after a few beers, we'd be like, we should start a company. And then after fewer beers, we'd say it. And when we said that with no beers, we're like, okay, it's a real idea now. Right? Not just excited brainstorming.
That's a great story. Yeah. So it has been 15 years and there has been you must have done hundreds of projects.
Oh yeah.
You must have built lots of businesses, lots of experience there. Great. What kind of products you're building right now? Is it lots of AI built into products, or is it the same custom development or something like that?
So we're using, that's a great question, because AI is such a hot topic right now. The first thing to do with AI is to make sure that this isn't Web3 all over again. I don't know about your take, right? But we did a very sober blog post about Web3 that, is on our site where, there's some promise to this whole notion of Web3 and all the, the crypto, blockchain, right? Like the joke with Web3 is like go into your, what's that?
NFTs.
Yeah, NFTs. But, at some point, everybody was going in on Web3 and chasing the money because it was such a buzzword all of a sudden. And so I think people would go to their local burger shop and say, burgers, but on the blockchain, right? It just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense. And there were some interesting things that happened, but to our credit, we never said, we're pivoting to Web3 and we're going all in and everyone needs to get on the blockchain. And, it's our job to soberly assess these trends and see if they're useful to our clients. So here comes AI, right? I think when AI first shows up, everyone's like, is this just going to be Web3 all over again? When you dig into AI, you're like, oh, there's legitimate power here today. It's legitimate, right? The thing that now has clouded the waters on AI is that, you have this sort of core of value and, if you add the word AI to your investor pitch deck, your chances of closing a round of funding go up. So everyone's adding it. And so now people are going to their local burger chain and saying, burgers, but AI, right? And it's like, right, tacking AI onto your solution is not the way to go. We've also seen a lot of AI missteps that we're very attentive to and don't want to lead our clients down the same path, right? So one way to really misstep an AI is to trust its output, right? AI as a technology, sorry, Google. I'm going to beat up on Google a little bit more. They're big, they can take it, right? Google kind of overdoing, its AI summaries, right? And its search results is a really good example, right? There's sort of the famous, how many rocks should I eat a day? Example. AI is not one of the points of AI is that as a large language model, when you think about AI, you should think about a service called, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, right? How about this? How about that, right? It's not meant to be a factual, it's not meant to be factual, right? At its worst, it hallucinates. At its best, it needs to be very diligently fact-checked and frankly, tone-checked. So we have seen examples in the industry close to us that, in our field, shall we say, I'm not going to name names, right? We've seen things happen where we're like, oh boy, that was not good. And they came from over-trusting AI output, right? They're like, I don't have to do this. AI can just do it for me. Ship it, right? And then the result, much like the Eat Rocks example, is factually inaccurate or totally inaccurate or doesn't reflect any of the work that's gone into that point. And if you ship that experience, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your reputation, right? And then I think totally everyone was very enamored with the shiny, weirdly plastic, dollar-y, sort of generations. And now when I see those on LinkedIn, someone, they're recognizable. AI is going to get better and be less recognizable. I don't doubt that. But by people diving in too soon and relying on it too much, right, to convey data or their message, right, they've sort of done themselves some damage, right? I'll just tell you, for me, if I see someone with one of those weird, shiny plastic people, vaguely nightmarish, that Dolly sort of goes to by default, I'm like, my perception of the content drops, right? It sort of betrays a certain lack of investment and lack of originality. I get it. Prompt engineering is going to get better. These things are going to have more utility going forward. To get to the point about how we're using it for a client. So we're not stampeding to say, client X, you need to do X, but on the blockchain, right? Or sorry, but on AI. Let's see what I did there, right? But with AI, but we are seeing AI it has been a very effective productivity tool behind the scenes, right? Because AI can introduce the notion of how you solve a problem faster than you would get there yourself. And it has been an unquestionable productivity booster for that. Now, what you never want to do is have AI generate code and paste it into production, right? But AI can signal that there may be a solution down this path. Because every response that AI gives you back should say, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but it might be down here, right? And very often it is right? We're like, oh, it's like 80% right, but we haven't seen anything where it's 100% right. Then if you don't run it through your human filter and your expertise filter, you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
At the same time, there are some AI assistants like GitHub Copilot, and others, which are helping programmers and engineers. Like, we have been experiencing this as well, to tell them that you're going in the right direction, keep on going on.
Yep.
Or maybe use something like that. And if you're looking to build a logic like that, this may be a better way to do it. I believe that they're learning a lot from how programmers are using logics, and it would get better by time. I believe just like the internet revolution happened, AI revolution is the same, that it would make things faster and more organized for us. Because, before internet, before computers, if you have to go into an office, there used to be like huge file cabinets, and you have to find those files, and you have to be scared if there's a fire or something and you might lose lots of documents inside the office. And computers came, and you can have all these, large organizations had like 5 to 10 rooms where all these files were kept, and they all came inside the computer. And I think AI is doing that. It's making us more organized. By the time they'll get much better. It would help us to be more productive, and help us, productive work ultimately means that it would help us reach the decisions faster and make the results come out much faster. And I think that's it.
We have had the same experience as a productivity booster, right? As a way to brainstorm ideas we might not have thought of otherwise. Chat GPT, GitHub Copilot. We actually had everyone on our team say, pick a tool you would like to utilize. We'll verify that it's, that it's a legitimate tool, that it's not going to pull any client data into some public large language model. You can set up guidelines around that. We have an AI policy, and we invited our team to go find a tool that worked for them and then report back on whether it was of high utility or low utility as part of their journey. And so, things like AI can really help with documentation, or AI is pretty good at looking at code and telling the programmer what that code is doing, right? And that's not content that's ever going to make it into the final product. You might have saved that programmer an hour, right? With that, that kind of functionality, right? And so there's definite time savings, which makes it very much in that realm. There's legitimate power at the core of AI. I agree. I think it's a matter of using it judiciously, and not, from our perspective, not jumping onto that sort of let's call it the second wave hype train of AI, where it's getting bolted onto things where it has no business made.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It has been a huge pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the great questions, Sanjit, and I hope hope you have a great summer, and hope we'll have a chance to talk again soon.
Sure. Talk again soon.